was the guy that forgot to say no. I was doing civil work for that prosecutor, Jeff Modisett, and I had been working for him since he took office because I had worked for his predecessor, Steve Goldsmith, actually. And at some point early, his chief deputy, Dave Dreyer, asked me if I'd be interested in coming back just to try that case. I think the logic being that I'd been through what we thought were high-profile cases. Little did we know, we had no clue what high-profile really meant until we got to this thing. But death penalties and some white-collar stuff. So they wanted to know if I would do it, and I said, and I quote, "When donkeys fly." And he laughed and said, okay. So I was back in the office a week, 10 days later. In connection with the Black Expo, for a number of years, and I don't know how many, there had been a Miss Black America beauty pageant that was just like Sandra was, except it was all young black women, high school seniors, I think, and up. And Tyson was here to do promos and to hype the Black Expo. Danny Glover has been there, big names in black entertainment had been there, and for some reason somebody thought that he would be a good idea. And he had just an insatiable, at least curiosity, if not appetite, for these girls. The style of prosecution that I learned as a student was essentially in violent crime cases, mostly murders. And you've got the burden of proof, and people think they're tough, but they're not. They become reluctant in a hurry, particularly if some guy's life is on the line. And you can see them fold up like a cheap card table when it comes time to talk about whether the guy's going to live or not. So you have to go hard to hit them a lot of evidence in a hurry, but it's got to be organized, and it can't get tripped up in a bunch of extraneous abstractions or objections, so you have to be prepared. Teach the witnesses to understand what the courtroom's about. Make sure they understand what you're looking for. You don't want a blank stare out of somebody that's nervous anyway because they don't understand where that question came from. You don't want some guy being over on the defense side to be able to interrupt us with a big, long-winded objection. So you make sure that your questions are formed properly, and that way you can put the pedal down and go right through it, which we did. Desiree was a wonderful witness. Trial got started, we did opening statement, and we called her as our first witness. And she was dressed beautifully in Sunday go-to-meeting clothes. She's a Sunday school teacher. I mean, she's a sweet kid. And she's just a wisp of a woman. Tall, kind of tall, very slender, elegant looking. And there was an audible gasp that went through the whole room when she walked in to see him over there. 260 at that time, because he got hurt, so he wasn't training, so he picked up a bunch of weight, and he's a big man anyway. And so they'd been looking at him, and here comes this wisp of a woman, still looks like a kid to all the dads and the moms in the room, and she just was wonderful. They couldn't touch her on cross. She had the kind of credibility that goes to telling the truth. One thing that we had to do, and they didn't do this successfully with William Kennedy Smith, they were not able to do it with Ray Lewis, is to strip away the celebrity status of a defendant in a violent crime. It's not easy to do that because you can see them. They're sitting there, particularly men. They're looking over there. It's really him, and you know, if he sits there as the guy that they imagine with his heavyweight championship belt around his waist, you're in trouble. He's got to get turned into another copy of the species pretty fast. He was easier to do that with than some would be. Because he had a pretty much of a bad boy reputation, didn't testify well, got mad. I had him, he was holding on to the garment that he'd torn, and I got under his skin some way, I forget how, and he threw it at the court reporter. I mean, not in her face, but right across her desk, because she was sitting right next to me. And I thought, okay, touchdown. Once we got him to show his backside, we'd all the intelligence we could get in preparing for that told us, establish what points you want to make them and sit down, because everybody loves the sound of their own voice, and you keep going, pretty soon you trip over it, he says something and you say something, and then you've got issues with the record. So we went through it, and there were some that thought I did a terrible job on that. They didn't know what they were talking about, and still don't. But the ones that did know, there were a couple of guys that were Judge John Tranberg, who was retired from the bench at that point and whom I'd prosecuted in front of many times, to include death penalty cases, gave me great reviews on that. It's nice to see something good in the middle of all that kind of thing. I got a call about, I don't know, not quite 11 p.m. So they were out for 10 hours. So we loaded up, back we went. And this happens once in a while. I don't know what's just blind luck, but a couple of times I've come back when a verdict has been in, and I walk in the courtroom and the place is empty except for the defendant. And he and I were the only two men in the room. And we were, well, I suppose we were 30 feet apart, far enough that I could get away from him without getting my head knocked off. And we made eye contact, and he just kind of nodded a little bit. And I had that sense, he knows. Matter of fact, there's a chapter in Heavy Justice that Randy Roberts wrote with me called They Always Know, and it was about the verdict, and they do. I've had any number of times that either a defendant has said, "You got me," or something like that, and it's never done theatrically, because it's always happened, this has happened, I don't know, half a dozen times, when there's nobody in the room, him and me. And he knew, I could see it, he was resigned to it. And I'd said to the trial team, this goes either way. Behave yourselves. We're not going to look like we've never been there before. So if we lose, pack it up, go out and start drinking. If we win, pack it up, and I don't know what happens after that. I couldn't know, but it was a maelstrom. We got dropped into a vortex that took a week to go away. I don't know how many 100 interviews we did. And it started that night. And so I get a call from a program director at WIBC saying, we want you to do an hour a week on Fridays during afternoon drive, just to talk about a recap of what's happened that week, and do a 5-minute hit with us Monday through Friday morning during morning drive. And I got paid some colossal number, like $100 a week or something. I don't want very much at the time. But I did it from my bed in the morning. If I didn't want to get up that early, I just didn't. No, it just, the tidy whitey interviews, as my kids used to say. And that kept going, because after we got that one done, and he was acquitted, we were having fun. Dave Wilson was the afternoon drive guy, and we stopped with the mornings because that was over with. And then we got a civil trial. So then I kept it up. Still got the CBS gig. And now I'm doing local and national TV pretty regularly. The guy that had what was called Night Beat at WIBC left and went to Minneapolis. Better gig, I don't know, more money. Ellsworth, Dave Ellsworth. And they asked me if I would take that job over. And they would set me up in my basement at home so I didn't have to drive over to 91st and Meridian at night. And I thought, boy, this is crazy, but they paid me. And I still had all those kids to worry about. And I started doing it. And I did it from, I think it was, I'm going to say it was 97 through the end of 1999. And Mike Pence announced for Congress in December of 99 and had to leave the air January 2nd of 2000. His radio show was syndicated on Network Indiana. He had 15, 18 stations, I think. And so they asked me to take that one over. Well, that was tough because that's 9 to noon. And I'm a lawyer. You got to work 9 to noon. But you know, it worked out. I'm 66 years old, I'm still working 2 jobs. I mean, a lot of people, oh, you're not practicing law. And I said, only every day from about 12:30 on or 1 o'clock, because I've got to educate kids, and that's what I do. I mean, when I fill out the form at the doctor's office, I still put lawyer in there and give this address, because this is what I've always been, and that's how I see myself. And I'm pretty much that on the air. Try to take your thinking skills and the way they teach you to think, and cross-examination skills, so that you draw as much information out as you can, and then the rest of it's just fun. Radio's tough because of that red light. You got to be there. You can't go, I don't think so today. You know, I'm not real busy. I think I'll just go in late. But it's light fare compared to what you do here. I mean, this practice, anybody's practice, but the personal injury practice is hurt people, high stakes, a lot of emotion involved, and you got to get things right. And so it isn't easy. It's still hard work.